Okay, so bonjour l'équipe. Yesterday we did ER and RE verbs, and we have the fine exercise of doing present tense actions with IR verbs this morning. So it's going to be another lesson about verbs. So strap in, and I look forward to going through this lesson with you guys today. Okay, let's go. So, present actions IR verbs. Bonjour and bienvenue. Hello and welcome. Today's language and culture lesson is once again all about verbs. You already know how to use regular ER verbs and regular RE verbs. So it's time to talk about regular IR verbs. Plus, we're also going to take a look at a few irregular verb endings in TIR and MIR. This means that once we get to the end of the lesson, you'll be able to use any regular French verb that you come across and some additional irregular ones too. Let's get to it. So regular IR verbs. We'll begin with regular IR verbs. You'll remember from our previous lesson that there are three types of regular verbs in French. There's ER, RE, and IR verbs. Each of these types follows a specific conjugation pattern. So if you can conjugate one regular IR verb, then you can conjugate any regular IR verb. Okay. So let's look at some of the common IR verbs. So the first verb we have today is finir.
Finir.
Let's get some volume.
Finir.
Finir. Finir. And finir means in English to finish. We have choisir.
Choisir.
Choisir. Choisir. And choisir in English means to choose. We have remplir.
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 Okay. Remplir. Okay, good pronunciation. Remplir in English means to fill or to fill out. We have réussir. I think, no, this is not it. Réussir. Réussir, I think.
Réussir.
I said it correctly the first time. Réussir.
Réussir.
Réussir. And réussir means to succeed. Let me work on my pronunciation. Réussir. Et voilà.
Réussir.
Réussir. Pronunciation. Réussir. Réussir.
Réussir.
Réussir. Let me try to do the pronunciation one more time. Réussir. C'est une bonne prononciation. And we have agir.
Agir.
Agir. Agir. And agir in English means to act. So let's run it through again. We have finir, to finish, choisir, to choose, remplir, to fill or to fill out, réussir, to succeed, and agir, to act. Now that you can see what we'll be working with, let's get to it. It's time to learn how to conjugate regular IR verbs. Like before, we'll stick to just looking at the present tense for now, le présent, and don't forget the French present can be translated using the English present simple, example, I walk, or the English present continuous, example, I am walking. Again, I will repeat that. And don't forget the French present can be translated using the English present simple. So example, I walk, or the French present continuous, example, I am walking. So in French, to say I walk, you would say je marche. So je marche can be translated to I walk in English, or I am walking. This is what this sentence is saying. Let's continue. Conjugating IR verbs. Just like with ER and RE verbs, you find the stem of a regular IR verb by removing its telltale IR ending. So if we use the verb finir, to finish, as an example, we get the stem fin. Now, it's just a matter of adding those present tense endings. You can find two conjugation tables below. one for the singular forms and one for the plural forms. Watch the endings carefully. So it's similar to what we did yesterday in terms of finding the verb stem. So to give you more context, finir is spelled F-I-N-I-R, okay? So if you're looking for the verb stem, what they're saying is that you drop the IR at the end of finir. And for example, if you want to say I am finished, or I finished, sorry, or I finish, you would say je finis. So it would be spelled J-E-F-I-N-I-S. So we drop the IR and we add IS for je finis to represent I finish in English. For example, example number 2, if you want to say you finish, you would drop the IR and you would add IIS, and it would be spelled T-U-F-I-N-I-S, and that would be tu finis, which means you finish. And so for je finis, tu finis, this is what you do. This is how it's spelled, T-U-F-I-N-I-S or J-E-F-I-N-I-S, but it changes for he finishes, she finishes, and one finishes. So for example, for il finit, to say he finishes, you will drop the IR and you would add IT. So it would be spelled I-L-F-I-N-I-T. For she finishes, it would be E-L-L-F-I-N-I-T, which is the same thing for he finishes. And if you want to say one finishes, it would be O-N-F-I-N-I-T, on finit. So let's hear the pronunciation to bring everything together.
Je finis.
Je finis, which is I finish.
Tu finis.
Tu finis, which is you finish.
Il finit.
Il finit, which is he finishes.
Elle finit.
Elle finit, which is she finishes.
On finit.
On finit, which is one finishes, and I went through the spelling before, okay? These endings are pretty different from the ones that you learn for the other verb types. However, you'll notice some similarities. For instance, the je and tu forms are the same and ultimately end in S. Just like with the RE verbs. And the il, elle, and on forms are identical to one another. Like with all of the verbs that you've learned so far, it's also worth noting that all of these singular verb forms sound exactly the same. They're just spelt differently with different silent letters at the ends, which we just went through. So all of them sound exactly the same. Je finis, tu finis, il finit, elle finit, on finit. But je and tu, the verb form is spelled the same, and il, elle, on, the verb form is spelled the same for those three pronouns. Okay. And don't forget, la liaison isn't commonly used between most verbs and any vowel initial word that follows them. So you don't have to worry about making any of these silent endings audible. So we're going on to the plural form. So we just did the singular forms, we're going to do the plural forms. So for the first phrase, we have nous finissons, which is we finish. Then we have vous finissez, which is you finish, formal / plural. Formal, and I don't think I explained this yesterday. Formal is like if you're talking to your boss. So for example, you would say vous finissons la reporte. Vous finissons la truc. Well, not truc. Vous finissons la chose. Vous finissez la chose, sorry. Vous finissez la chose. But if you're talking to more than one person, so for example, if you're talking to two people, you would use vous finissez. Vous finissez. Let's get the pronunciation.
Vous finissez.
Yeah. If you're talking to more than one person, you would use vous finissez. This is the plural context. But if you're talking to more than one, if you're talking to someone older or like someone in authority, you would use the vous finissez. Okay. Then we have il finit.
Ils finissent.
Ils finissent, which is they finish, masculine. And we have elles finissent, which is they finish, féminin. So For example, if you're talking about a group of people and there is only guys in this group, and you want to say they finish, you would say ils finissaient. Attends.
Ils finissent.
Sorry, ils finissent. Okay. Let me go over that example again. So, for example, if there's a group of guys and you want to say they finish, you would say ils finissent. Okay. If there is one girl, if there is one girl in the group, you can still say ils finissent. Okay. But if you're talking to a group of girls, you would say elles finissent. If there's no guys in the group, you would say elles finissent. So to represent they finish. Okay. Which is something that you have to be mindful of when you are speaking French. I hope that was explained properly. I hope so. So again, from the top, we have nous finissons. So for nous finissons, we have N-O-U-S for we. And for finish, it would be spelled F-I-N, which is the verb stem. And you continue the spelling I-S-S-O-N-S. So completely it would be spelled N-O-U-S-F-I-N-I-S-S-O-N-S. Nous finissons. For vous finissez, it would be V-O-U-S-F-I-N-I-S-S-E-Z. Again, vous finissez would be V-O-U-S-F-I-N-I-S-S-E-Z. For ils finissent, it would be I-L-S-F-I-N-I-S-S-E-N-T. Ils finissent. And for elles finissent, it would be E-L-L-E-S-F-I-N-I-S-S-E-N-T. So we see for each of the forms, for the plural forms, there's like a double S. And for nous finissons, the ending is ONS. For vous finissez, it's double S-E-Z. For finissent, ils finissent, it's double S-E-N-T. And for elles finissent, it's double S-E-N-T. As you can see, the endings for these plural forms are much longer than any of the conjugated endings we've seen so far. However, the usual patterns are still being followed. The nous form ultimately ends in ONS, which I mentioned before, and the vous form in EZ, and the il form in a perfectly silent ENT. Let's get some practice using all of these forms in sentences. So the first sentence is ils finissent le travail. Ils finissent le travail.
Ils finissent le travail.
Which means they are finishing the job. Let me work on my pronunciation. Ils finissent le travail. Et voilà. Let's listen. Ils finissent le travail. C'est bon. Then we have je finis le repas. Je finis le repas. Je finis le repas, je pense.
Je finis le repas.
Je finis le repas.
Je finis le repas.
Je finis le repas, which means I am finishing the meal. So, je finis le repas. Je finis le repas. Not good. I need to do it over. Because it sounds like I said j'ai. Je finis le repas. Et voilà. One more time. Je finis le repas. Good. Then we have elle finit le livre, which means she is finishing the book. Elle finit le livre. Okay.
Elle finit le livre.
Good. Elle finit le livre. Elle finit le livre. Then we have vous finissons l'écran. Vous finissez la l'écran. Vous finissez la leçon. Non.
Vous finissez la leçon.
Vous finissez la leçon. Vous finissez la leçon. Voilà. Vous finissez la leçon, which means you are finishing the lesson. Vous finissez la leçon. Then we have nous finissons le ménager. Nous finissons le ménager, which is we are finishing the housework. Nous finissons le ménager. Ok.
Nous finissons le ménage. Nous finissons le ménage.
Oh, nous finissons le ménage. Ok. Nous finissons le ménage. Et voilà. Then we have tu finis la vaisselle. Tu finis la vaisselle, which is you finish the dishes. Tu finis la vaisselle. Tu finis la vaisselle.
Tu finis la vaisselle.
Oh non. Tu finis la vaisselle, non vaisselle. Tu finis la vaisselle. Let's do that over. Tu finis la vaisselle. Right, so tu finis la vaisselle is you finish the dishes. Okay, elles finissent à quelle heure? Elles finissent à quelle heure, which is what time do they finish at? Elles finissent à quelle heure? Elles finissent à quelle heure? Let's listen.
Elles finissent à quelle heure?
Again.
Elles finissent à quelle heure?
Elles finissent à quelle heure? And you ask it another question too, obviously. Elles finissent à quelle heure? On finit le film. On finit le film, which is we are finishing the movie.
On finit le film.
On finit le film. On finit le film. I'll do that over. On finit le film. Et voilà. Il finit la course première. Il finit la course première.
Il finit la course premier.
Il finit la course première, which is he is finishing the race in first. Il finit la course première. I need to do that over. Il finit la course première. Good pronunciation. Il finit la course première.
Il finit la course premier.
Il finit la course première. Il finit la course première, which means, again, he is finishing the race in first. Now that you have had some practice with finir, to finish, let's try out some other verbs too. Below are sentences with the verb choisir, to choose, remplir, remplir, to fill or to fill out, and agir, to act.
Il choisit toujours le restaurant.
Okay. Il choisit toujours le restaurant, which means he always chooses the restaurant. Il choisit toujours le restaurant. We have nous remplissons les formulaires. Nous remplissons le formulaire.
Nous remplissons les formulaires.
Which means we fill out the forms. Nous remplissons le formulaire. I need to do that over. Nous remplissons les formulaires. Great. We have the next sentence, which is il agit très vite. Il agit très vite. Elle agisse, not il, sorry. Elles agissent très vite.
Elles agissent très vite.
Elles agissent très vite.
Elles agissent très vite.
Okay. Elles agissent très vite. That was not good. I need to do that pronunciation over.
Elles agissent très vite.
Elles agissent très vite. Elles agissent très vite. Okay. Elles agissent très vite.
Elles agissent très vite.
Agissent. Okay. Elles agissent très vite. The word agissent, I'm having some issues getting the right pronunciation. Elles agissent très vite. Elles agissent très vite.
Elles agissent très vite.
I'll try one more time. No, on the app, it's registering as I'm saying the right thing. But the way it's registering, I don't think it's good, right? So I'm going to try one more time to see if I get it. So, elles agissent très vite.
Elles agissent très vite.
Agissent. Agissent. Okay. Elles agissent très vite. Let me listen to myself. Elles agissent très vite. Elles agissent très vite. I think today I'll ask somebody, I'll say the sentence to one of my friends and find out if they understand what I'm saying. Okay. Note that agir means to act in the same sense of to take action, and not as to act in a play or movie. For the kind of acting that actors do, you will need to use the verb jouer to play. So jouer is an ER verb.
Jouer.
Jouer, which means to play, to act in a play/movie. Jouer. Voilà. So that was the conjugation pattern for the regular IR verbs. Not too bad, right? It will work with any regular IR verb you come across. Now, however, it's time for us to talk about a small group of very common irregular IR verbs. Irregularities, the TIR and MIR pattern. You'll be glad to know that most verbs end in ER are regular, which makes them nice and trustworthy. Some that end in RE or IR, however, don't play by the same rules. Okay, let's go. Like être, to be, and avoir, to have. There is good news though. Many irregular verbs tend to form part of a group that behaves the same way and follows the same conjugation pattern. And this makes them easier to memorize. In this section, we'll be looking at one such group of verbs, which all end in TIR and MIR. Now, not every verb that ends in TIR and MIR belongs to this group. However, most of the ones that we do are incredibly common, so they're worth learning about early on. So here's a list of the most common verbs in this group. First word, sortir.
Sortir.
Sortir, which means to go out or to leave. Sortir. Right. Then we have partir, which means to leave or to depart, which is close to sortir.
Partir.
Let's go. Partir. Voilà. Then we have dormir.
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 Dormir. Okay. I need to be mindful of dormir saying that, because sometimes I realize that I stress on things that not necessarily you need to stress on, and it just sounds like, you know, dormir. There's a slight
Dormir.
dormir. Dormir. Voilà, c'est bon. Then we have sentir, which is to feel physically / to smell. Okay, sorry, I didn't mention dormir means to sleep, okay?
Sentir.
Sentir. Let's go. Sentir. To feel physically or to smell, okay? Then we have mentir.
Mentir.
Mentir. And mentir means to lie. Mentir. Voilà. Okay, I mentioned before stressing on the end of the word. There are times like I might be talking to someone in French, and I might, okay, let's say for example, I say, je n'ai pas dormir hier soir, you know, I didn't sleep yesterday night, or I didn't sleep yesterday night. And the person might be like, okay, why are you saying dormir, you know? So it's just to be mindful of not stressing too much. Yes, there's a level of stress that is supposed to be placed at the end of the word, but sometimes I overdo it in my bid to be to sound more authentic. And sometimes in doing that, it does not sound authentic. You know, it's just too much of voila. Just my personal experience I'm sharing. Now, let's find out how they work. So conjugating the TIR and the MIR group. These are still IR verbs, and that means that their conjugation pattern is based on the usual IR pattern. It's just not exactly the same. The endings are a bit shorter, and the stems actually drop a letter in the singular forms too. This may sound very complicated, but don't worry, it's actually not that different from what you've been doing so far. So we'll show you how it works below using sortir to go out or to leave as our example verb. Okay. All right. Let me explain this one. So the stem for sortir is S-O-R. Sortir is spelled S-O-R-T-I-R. Okay? And for example, if I want to say I go out, in French you would say je sors. And je sors is spelled J-E, the stem being S-O-R. You drop the T-I-R and you add an S. Okay, so that means I go out. In French you would say je sors.
Je sors.
Je sors. Je sors, which means I go out. Okay? Then we have tu sors. Tu sors is spelled T-U-S-O-R-S. Again, you drop the T-I-R and you just add an S. So for I go out and for you go out, you say je sors and tu sors. It's spelled exactly the same. The sors is spelled exactly the same, S-O-R-S. And you use it to say je sors, I go out, tu sors, you go out. Okay, great. Let's move on. Then we have il sort.
Il sort.
Il sort. We have elle sort.
Elle sort.
And we have on sort.
On sort.
On sort. Okay. So il sort is he goes out. So with il sort, instead of adding an S on the end, you maintain the same stem of S-O-R and you add a T. Okay? So il sort is spelled I-L for he and S-O-R-T to represent goes out. Il sort, he goes out. For elle sort, the sort is spelled exactly the same. So it's E-L-L-E to represent she, and then we have S-O-R-T to represent goes out. So it's spelled exactly the same like il sort, elle sort, on sort, exactly the same. So from the top, je sors, I go out, tu sors, you go out, il sort, he goes out, elle sort, she goes out, on sort, one goes out, okay? Let's continue. As you can see, the endings used here are the same as those used with regular IR verbs, with one difference. The I has been removed, so instead of the je and tu forms taking the ending is, like we did before with finir, they take the ending s. Meanwhile, instead of il, elle, and on forms taking the ending it, as we did with finir, they take the ending t. Can you see the similarity? Take a quick scroll up to compare the table. Okay, it's telling me to scroll up to compare the table. But what I would propose is that you look at the verb finir and then you compare it against sortir, and you would see the similarities, but you will also see the little nuances between the two verbs. Let's continue. But something else has happened here too. The regular stem, S-O-R-T, sort, has lost its final letter and become S-O-R. This happens in the singular forms of all of the verbs in this TIR and MIR group. For example, partir, to leave, or to depart becomes PAR instead of PART. Dormir, to sleep, becomes DOR instead of DORM. Sentir, to feel or to smell, becomes SEN instead of SENT. Mentir, to lie, becomes MEN instead of MENT. This may seem a bit unfair, as it's yet another thing to memorize. However, it has to happen. Yeah, there's a lot of things in French you just need to memorize, right? Which, especially doing it tout seul by yourself, like how I'm trying to learn French by myself, it's there are just things that you need to know, and sometimes it's not fun. But if you want to speak a high level of French, peut-être tu veux rester en France après tu recevras ton diplôme. For example, like in my case, I would like to stay in France after I receive my diploma. So that means that I really need to, if I want to integrate into society, I need to be able to speak a high level of French. And memorizing things like this is what will help you do that, you know? Because you can speak French, people could understand you, but you, at least for me, I shouldn't say you, at least for me, I want to speak good French, proper French, you know? Like how the way I speak English, you know? But that will be a continuous learning process. Let's continue. Let me get back on track. However, it has to happen. Otherwise, you would end up with il, elle, and on forms that looks like S, O, R. Okay. Basically, they're saying here is that you have to drop the T, and you have to drop the T in mentir, the T in sentir, the M in dormir, and the T in partir, because the spelling would be very unusual in French. Correct. And it would be difficult to pronounce, you know? So, for example, trying to pronounce sortir or trying to pronounce sortir with two T's to say je sors, I don't even know how to pronounce it. Okay, let's continue. So we did the singular forms, we're going to do the plural forms now. So we have the plural forms for sortir. Nous sortons. So nous sortons is spelled nous sortons is spelled nous sortons is spelled Nous, Sortons. Vous sortez, vous sortez,
Vous sortez.
vous sortez is spelled Voussortez. Ils sortent is Ilssortent.
Ils sortent.
And we have elles sortent, Illessortent. Okay, so for nous sort, we take the common ending, the new ending, ONS. It's basically, the stem is SORT, and then we add the common endings for nous, which is ONS, so nous sortes. For vous sortez, it's SORT is the stem, and we add EZ. For ils sortent, it's SORT, we add the common stem for il, which is ENT, and the same thing for L. The stem is SORT, and we add the common ending for elsort, which is ENT. So very straightforward. Let's run it through again. Nous sortons.
Nous sortons.
Nous sortons. Nous sortons, which is we go out.
Vous sortez.
Vous sortez, which is you go out, formal / plural, and I explained that previously.
Ils sortent.
Ils sortent, which is they go out, masculine.
Elles sortent.
Elles sortent, they, feminine, go out. The endings used in these plural verb forms are also like the endings for the regular IR verbs, but in a shorter form. The ISS part of the endings has been removed. This means that these verb forms actually use the exact same endings that I use for the regular ER and RE verbs. Okay, I'll go over that sentence again. The endings used in these plural verb forms are also like the endings for regular IR verbs, but in a shorter form. The ISS, okay, because they're making reference to finissons, okay? The ISS part of the endings has been removed. This means that these verb forms actually use the exact same endings that I use for the ER and RE verbs. Another piece of good news here is that there isn't any chance of things becoming unpronounceable with these verb endings, which means that the verb stem gets to follow the usual rules that remain so. Okay. And the spelling for so, the verb for the stem, for the plural pronouns is SORT. And this is for the verb sortir. And this would apply to every single TIR ending verb. Good. So there you have it. These verb endings in TIR and MIR are still clearly IR verbs. However, some changes occur so that they don't quite follow the regular IR pattern. If you're having trouble seeing these similarities between these TIR and MIR conjugations and the regular IR conjugations, that's okay. For some learners, it may be easier to think of TIR and MIR verbs as a completely different group. And just to memorize how they work without connecting their pattern to the regular IR verbs. Below are some example sentences so that you can practice each of the verb forms for sortir, which means to go out, in context. Okay. On sort plus tard. We are going out later.
On sort plus tard.
On sort plus tard. C'est pas bon. On sort plus tard. C'est bon. On sort plus tard in English just means we are going out later. Il sort de la voiture, which means he gets out of the car. Il sort de la voiture.
Il sort de la voiture.
Okay. Il sort de la voiture. Okay. We have elles sortent ensemble. Sorry, not elle. Ils sortent ensemble.
Ils sortent ensemble.
Ils sortent ensemble. Ils sortent ensemble. Let me try that again. Ils sortent ensemble. Okay, so ils sortent ensemble means they are going out together. We have elle sort avec Marc.
Elle sort avec Marc.
Elle sort avec Marc. Elle sort avec Marc, which means she is going out with Mark. Then we have elle sort du magasin.
Elles sortent du magasin.
Elles sortent du magasin. Elles sortent du magasin. I need to remember that. Elles sortent du magasin, which means they are leaving the store. Elles sortent du magasin. Voilà. Then we have tu sors de ta bulle. Tu sors de ta bulle.
Tu sors de ta bulle.
Which means you are getting out of your bubble. I need to use this word. I need to use this sentence. Tu sors de ta bulle. Tu sors de ta bulle. I need to remember this. Tu sors de ta bulle. Which means, again, you are getting out of your bubble. Tu sors de ta bulle. Tu sors de ta bulle. Then we have nous sortons du train. Which means you are getting off the train. Nous sortons du train. Nous sortons du train. You are getting out of the train.
Nous sortons du train.
Then we have je sors de la douche. I'm getting out of the shower. Je sors de la douche. Je sors de la douche. Voilà.
Je sors de la douche.
Je sors de la douche. Then we have vous sortez en boîte. Vous sortez en boîte.
Vous sortez en boîte.
Okay. Vous sortez en boîte, which means you are going out to a club or going clubbing. The final example above uses the phrase sortir en boîte, which means to go out to a club or to go clubbing. It might be helpful to note that boîte, club here is short for boîte de nuit, which in French, which is the French term for nightclub. Normally, the word boîte would just mean box. Okay. So boîte de nuit is how you say nightclub in French, but people would say vous sortons de boîte or ils sortent de boîte, ils sortent en boîte to mean club as well. But if you just use, it depends on the context, because boîte normally just means box, but people use it to represent club, right? So it depends on the context.
La boîte.
La boîte, which is the box or the club. La boîte. And if you want to say nightclub, you say la boîte de nuit. La boîte de nuit.
La boîte de nuit.
Okay, good. Okay, leaving, sortir versus partir. There can sometimes be some confusion when you should use sortir and partir, since they can both be translated as to leave. However, there's a key difference between sortir and partir. Specifically, sortir indicates that you're going out or getting out of somewhere, often temporarily, while partir indicates that you are leaving somewhere behind or leaving for a new location, often more long term or in a more final sort of way. Okay? So, je sors, I am going out, I am leaving, but I will be back later. So, for example, je sors chez moi parce que je vais aller à l'école pour faire de travail. Okay? I'm leaving my house because I'm going to school to do work. But I know that I'm not going to not come back home. So I'm leaving my house with the intention of coming back. Okay? Je sors.
Je sors.
Okay. Je pars. I am leaving with no indication that I will come back soon or at all.
Je pars.
Je pars. Je pars. So, for example, let's say, what is an example? Okay. Okay. There are some examples below. I would use those because my brain is not braining. Il sort de la maison à 8 heures. Sorry. Il sort de la maison à 8 heures. He leaves his house at 8 o'clock. Il sort de la maison à 8 heures.
Il sort de la maison à 8 heures.
Okay. On part en vacances. We are leaving on vacation. On part en vacances.
On part en vacances.
Okay, good. So this is the example. So he's leaving his house at 8 o'clock with the intention of coming back, as I mentioned before in the example that I used. And the second example, on part en vacances, we are leaving on vacation, which is still a bit confusing for me because we're leaving on vacation, but we're gonna come back. You know, it's not like we're going to. I guess it depends on the duration of time, but I will do some research and try and figure it out to make sure I understand it clearly for myself. And if I find anything, I would just either comment on the video or I might mention it in my next before I start my next class. Okay, notice that vacances is plural in French while vacation is singular in English. Yes, vacances in French is spelled in a plural way with an S on the end. However, in English it's singular. Okay. This is why it can be easier to memorize sortir to go out, and partir to leave or to depart. It's also worth pointing out that sortir can mean to go out in the sense of going out with friends as well. Okay, or to go out in the sense of dating someone, as you may have noticed from these examples above. On sort plus tard. We are going out later.
On sort plus tard.
On sort plus tard. Then we have elle sort avec Marc.
Elle sort avec Marc.
Elle sort avec Marc. And that's not all it can do. It can also mean to take out. Je sors le chien.
Je sors le chien.
Je sors le chien, which means I am taking the dog out. And we have vous sortez le poubelle.
Vous sortez les poubelles.
Vous sortez les poubelles. Vous sortez les poubelles, which means you take the trash out. Now that we've got that out of the way, let's take a quick look at some other examples with verbs in this TIR and MIR conjugation. Below are sentences that use dormir to sleep, mentir to lie, sentir to feel. So, je dors très tard, which means I sleep very late. Je dors très tard.
Je dors très tard.
Okay. We have vous mentez, which means you are lying. Vous mentez.
Vous mentez.
Vous mentez. Let's try that again. Vous mentez. Again, vous mentez means you are lying. And we have les gâteaux sont très bons, which means the cake smells very good. Le gâteau sont très bons.
Le gâteau sent très bon.
Le gâteau sont très bons. C'est pas bon.
Le gâteau sent très bon.
Okay, that wasn't good. I'll try to do it again. Le gâteau sont très bons.
Le gâteau sent très bon.
Okay. Le gâteau sont très bons. Le gâteau sont très bons.
Le gâteau sent très bon.
Les gâteaux sont très bons, which means again, the cake smells very good. Okay, so action replay time. Regular ER, RE, and IR verbs each follow their own distinct conjugation pattern. Some IR verbs that end in TIR or MIR follow an irregular pattern that is somewhat similar to the regular IR verb pattern. These verbs include sortir, to go out, to leave, partir, to leave or to depart, dormir, to sleep, sentir, to feel or to smell, mentir, to lie. And now that we have reached the end of the lesson, you can conjugate any regular verbs. You can conjugate any regular verb at all in French. Congratulations. The amount of things that you can say in this language has grown so much, so be sure to keep practicing and memorize your conjugation patterns carefully, particularly for the ER, RE, and IR verbs. So, as per usual, we end the lesson with the culture part of the lesson, just to get your culture up, especially in French. Okay, and today's culture lesson focuses around le métro, which is the subway. So Paris is a beautiful city to take in by foot. This is quite true, particularly during summer. Eventually, though, your feet will get tired, and that's when it's great to hop onto the metro, subway, and zoom to wherever you need to be. The Paris Metro subway is a vast, mostly subterranean travel network with hundreds of stations all over the city. In fact, the metro stations are so common that it's well spaced throughout Paris that most of the Parisians would normally describe where they live simply by saying the name of the metro station closest to their home. The fact that these stations are absolutely everywhere is also a boon to travelers. Not only does it mean that they can get to pretty much anywhere in the city quickly and easily, but it also means that you have a surefire method of getting your bearings if you happen to become lost. Just keep walking until you hit a metro station, which shouldn't take very long in any direction, especially if you stick to bigger streets. Once you do find a station, you can easily check the network map and see where you are in the city. This is true. It's very easy to get around in Paris. The metro subway network maps show a massive multicolored web of numbered lines, but as you get familiar with it, it can actually become easier to use the metro network map to plan your way around the city than it is to use an ordinary map. Anytime that we live in, you just use Google Maps, or you use the one that I use, City Mapper, which is good. Using the metro subway also isn't as dark and dreary as you might expect. This is true. As you pass through station after station, you'll notice that many of them have their own unique decorative style. This is true. I noticed this in my time here, which I find very, very cool. Sometimes related to famous sites that are nearby, particularly like the Louvre, the station at the Louvre, or the station that runs near the Louvre, like Franklin Roosevelt Station, really, really cool. Or the station that runs under the Louvre, I should say. This adds a touch of color and delight to traveling through the tunnels, and the stations themselves aren't the only part that's decorative. The signposts, the arches that herald the station to the metro above ground also have their own distinct look, which makes them both quaint and easy to spot. So,
Le métro.
just to work on that pronunciation. Le métro. Et voilà, c'est ça. Je finis. So this brings us to the end of today's lesson, all about IR verbs. And we did touch on the irregularities between TIR and the MIR pattern. So again, just to give more context, I am doing my French learning tout by myself and trying to be fluent before the end of this year. I don't only use this app, I also try to spend 15 minutes on Duolingo, and I use another application called Drops. And I try to speak in French directly with people here. And before I came to France, just to give context, I spoke zero French, none. And when I started uni, they did offer us a French class, which was like for 1 hour, for one day, for the week, which is nothing. But at the time, I was so swamped with work that I didn't really take advantage of it. But now, ça va. I can speak a lot more. I can actually speak now. So take this as encouragement. Just keep trying, keep pushing, keep going, and you'll get there. You'll get there. Whether it's French, whether it's Spanish, whether it's Arabic, Portuguese, whatever. I think the key to language learning is consistency and really falling in love with learning. So hopefully this lesson helps somebody, and I look forward to tomorrow's lesson. Have a good day, and yeah, see you guys soon.